Hey everybody, it's Model Man here. And if you've been following my channel, you know that I mostly build model kits. I have some other projects that I do as well. And in this case, I'm going to build not a model kit, but a full-blown computer. If you've never done this before, then I hope this will definitely give you a good idea of what it's about. It's definitely not as scary as it might seem, and you can do it for hundreds of dollars cheaper in a lot of cases than buying a pre-built box. The difference is that you don't get tech support, and that is really what you're paying for when you do spend those few extra $100. In my case, I've been building my own machines for going on 15 years in February, so I'm pretty comfortable with the overall process. This will be my 13th build, basically, which, well, it's probably closer to 15 or 16, I guess. I number all my computers, so the very first one was 1, and then I either changed the processor or the motherboard on that, and the next one became 2, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be computer number 13, which means that I have built either 13 machines or swapped out 13 different motherboards or processors, or both simultaneously, if you can follow that logic. So there are a few components that are definitely required when you're building a box. If you're just swapping out components, that's one thing, but in this case I'm building a new generation box to carry me through the next couple years. And there are two considerations that you really should keep in mind, that foremost in your mind, when you go to build your own computer. One, what's the purpose? In my case, I'm going to be using this for visual effects and art to supplement my career. And two, what is the upgrade path for the components that you have? So in this case, I've put a lot of different components together that should last me a good 2 years or so for this box. And by the time Intel comes out, or AMD comes out with their next generation of processor, I may be able to skip a generation actually, and as the prices come down I can continually max this one out until it's full up, and then I'll be ready for another box in hopefully 2 years, 2013, 2014. But in the meantime I'll be dropping new components in here and there. So first of all, if you are starting a build from scratch, which is what this is going to assume, you need a case, and of course you need a case fan. Just kidding, that's a little too big for this one actually. And I will be pulling a few components out of my old box and putting them into here, such as the DVD drive, and that might be it actually in this case. We'll take a look when I get to that point. But a case is first and foremost. Those usually come with fans, but not always. Some of them come with power supplies, but not always. And in this case, for all the power that I need, I went with a Diablo-Tech 950 watt power supply, and this will be my first Diablo-Tech power supply, but I've bought a few other components from them and have generally been happy, so we'll see how this one does. And of course, to run everything you need a motherboard. In this case I'm going with an Asus, which I've had a couple of their motherboards before and have certainly been happy enough with them. This one is what is basically the foundation of the computer. With this, I'll be able to upgrade the CPU for several iterations. I'll be able to add a lot more RAM later on, and I might max out the hard drives right away, but there's plenty of room in there for a lot of expansion going on, especially in the graphics card range. Right now, I've just got myself basically what amounts to a generic NVIDIA. The GT series is definitely better than their GE series, but I think it's still in the same GeForce range that they're doing. Going up from that would be the Quadro series, which has a lot of physics, generally not needed for typical people, and I really should get one of those, but the prices are just outlandish at hundreds of dollars for a board, whereas this one was like 70 or 80. Of course, with the motherboard you also need a processor or CPU, and I've got myself one of the Intel's new Core i7s. It's one of the lower ranges ones, which is going to allow me to get the more expensive ones as those drop in price. So the current big-time Intel Core costs $1,000. By the time I'm ready to replace this one, that should be down to $200 or $300, I think. And it'll be a bargain at that point, but not compared to the newer processors, of course. By the time I can afford the current big-time processor, I'll almost be ready to get an entirely new box and start the whole process over again. I've got a few drives here. I'm looking to put probably 6 in here right now for a RAID array, and I'll talk about what that is a little later on. But this is a start. I've only got 3 here now. I've got 2 more on order. And the one thing that I forgot to place in this order was memory. So go figure on that. So I've got some RAM coming in tomorrow, I think, and a little more coming in a little later. There's a couple more drives coming in. And if you've already got a monitor from your previous computer, you obviously don't need to buy a new one, but I'll talk about those briefly as well. Keyboard, mouse, all that kind of stuff is standard as well, and you can get those cheap enough just about anywhere. So what I'll be doing with this build is first we'll be popping the case open. We'll probably be putting the motherboard in first, or actually we'll be putting the CPU on the motherboard first, and then we'll be putting the motherboard into the case. We'll put the power supply in, the hard drives, we'll get the RAM going, we'll get all the components working, and I'll show you the entire process from start all the way to installing the OS, and that'll be that. So it should be a several day process, definitely over the weekend. If you've got all the components on hand, you can essentially do the build in a couple hours, no problem whatsoever. The OS install can be several hours itself, and then actually getting everything to where you like it is even more time than that. But this is all the easy stuff, putting all the components together, plug this into that, and so on and so forth. So with that, I'll end this introductory video, and next up we'll be looking at the case and all the individual components, I think, real quick out of the boxes. Thanks for watching. See ya.